Hello, everybody. The summary I did was on cold weather injuries and also things to look for. So recommendations for prevention and also how to recognize injuries in cold weather. Around here in California, we don't get a lot of cold weather injuries, so it is going to be something that we should read about and know just in case we do get hired somewhere that does have cold weather injuries. So what this article basically stated was it went through the basic type of cold weather injuries, how people get cold weather injuries, signs and symptoms, and also ways to help the patient or athlete that once they get the injury, how to help them recover. So there are three basic types of cold weather injuries. There are they are the decreased core temperature, freezing injuries of the extremities, and non-freezing injuries to the extremities. And between these three, the most common is the core temperature, the decrease in core temperature, because hypothermia is in this category, and it is the most common because um, a lot of people don't recognize the signs and symptoms when in cold weather because they just try to play through the cold weather or they're new to cold weather. So when they're around snow, they don't know when to start warming their bodies back up. So what happens in hypothermia is that our temperature drops. So our temperature normally is about 98.6 degrees and could range to 100 degrees. But what happens when our body temperature decreases, our vital organs start to shut down, and um, our blood flow stops going to our hands and feet, so that all our heat can stay in our core to help our heart function. And um, the number where hypothermia is defined is 95 degrees or less. So if our body is 95 degrees Fahrenheit or less, it is considered hypothermia. Another common injury is frostbite. What this is that mostly happens in the hands and feet, and it is where our our extremities get frozen basically. And it does start by our finger. I'm just going to talk about the fingers. So mostly it happens in our hands. So it starts by our fingers getting really red and swollen and sometimes numb. Those are some signs to look for frostbite. And then if it's not treated, our hands can actually turn black, which are pretty gross. I tried looking at video. I tried to add some pictures and stuff. It didn't work, but there's some pretty nasty photos of frostbite. So if you're looking for that, it's something to look into. Um, there's also something called frostnip, which is the precursor to frostbite. So it's not as severe as frostbite, but if not treated, of course, it could lead to frostbite. But what it is just the freezing of the superficial skin, so superficial tissue of the skin. So it's not super severe. Another common one is a trench foot. It's basically it's kind of like frostbite, but for our feet. Just our foot gets swollen and could turn black, and there's numbness. But something to look forward to if you're an athletic trainer in cold weather cities or states um, is if a patient has a past history of cold weather injuries, definitely keep monitoring them because they are 2 to 4 times more likely to get a re-injury in cold weather. Also, temperature is a good thing to look for. Also, wind chill, especially playing sports outdoors, of course. And so the recommendations on the summary was 30 degrees Fahrenheit or less. The athletic trainer needs to be aware of all the possibilities that can happen. So definitely when it's cold, athletic trainer needs to be on it and just look out for their athletes. And then 15 degrees Fahrenheit or below, it's considered um, pretty bad. So it's a good time to start thinking about stopping practice around 15 degrees or Fahrenheit or low or less, or just modify the practice or game. But most likely, if it's a game, it's going to be rescheduled, of course. And then 0 degrees Fahrenheit or less, definitely everything needs to be terminated. Go home, get somewhere warm, just because there's too many bad things that can happen. And then some signs to look for is shivering. Excessive shivering, definitely um, look for that, because in hypothermia, that's one thing that people have, is that they start shivering a lot. But shivering is not bad. It's a good thing, because shivering increases the blood flow, and it also helps increase the body temperature. So shivering is not a bad thing. It's just a sign to look for. Also, athletic trainers need to be aware of what clothing the athletes are wearing. So definitely there needs to be the first layer needs to be kind of like an Under Armour type of clothing, where it doesn't soak the sweat, but just keeps the sweat and helps the core temperature stay where it needs to be. Also, the second layer needs to be a warmer, um, either jacket or something over their jerseys, just so that they can stay warm. And then, of course, there needs to be a top layer, which is a heavier jacket. So if some sports, like in football, when the players aren't playing, they need to be wearing a jacket that prevents from wind, like a wind-resistant jacket. So those are some things to look for. And um, some good ways to keep so say you get an athlete that does get injured, some good ways to bring their temperature back to normal is a warm bath. Warm bath is the best way to do it, but if some people don't have warm baths, warm water is something good to have. Also a warm cup of beverage, so hot chocolate or something, just something for them to drink that will get their body back to their normal temperature. And also, of course, keep blankets and hot pads around to help those athletes that get injured. And any other questions, go on National Athletic Training Association.com. There are plenty of recommendations and guidelines. So that's pretty much it. Have a good one.